Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to probably the final sit-down chit-chat about what's been going on with my health and my recurrent miscarriages for a little while, just because I feel like we're all caught up on the story. I think that maybe eventually I'm going to make a little video about my charting once it gets better, but until then I think it's going to be vlogs. Before that happens, I wanted to make one last final video. No, it's not one last final video. It's last little video in this part of the beginning series of the health journey and the pregnancy journey until I start to see some progress and whatnot. So I wanted to make a video about how I self-diagnosed my progesterone deficiency and my estrogen dominance, why I did that, and how I'm planning on fixing it. The first thing that I want to say about self-diagnosing is that I don't believe in self-diagnosing, especially when it comes to anything that is like psychological, like mental health and all that stuff. I really think that it's important to see a doctor. The reason why I had to resort to self-diagnosis at this stage is because where I live, doctors will not do any testing, like any blood test or anything, if you haven't had 3 to 4 miscarriages yet. Or at least my doctor won't do that unless you go private, and I'm currently on a wait list for a private clinic. The reason why I was able to self-diagnose is because I've done a lot of research about periods, about coming off birth control, about fertility and all that stuff, and that research has led to me, obviously, like I've mentioned, going off the pill and charting my cycle. The book that I used for that is called Taking Charge of Your Fertility. This book is always linked down below in my description of the video for the simple reason that it changed my life. So I think even on my videos about travel and stuff, it's always there because I want it to be really easy to find for anyone who's looking for ways to improve their health and to use their cycle as a way to recognize any problems that they might be having. As soon as I began tracking 3.5 years ago, as soon as I started, I noticed that there was one very obvious problem, and that was that I was spotting about a week before my period, and I would spot for the full week, so a full 7 days of spotting, and then have my period for 7 days. That's been something that I've been noticing since the beginning. Also, in my charts, I'll show you what they look like. So this is my current one that I'm doing right now. It's not finished because we're still in the middle of the month, but basically how it works is that your temperatures stay pretty low before you ovulate, and then there's a spike, as you would see here, and then the temperatures here are after ovulation. Now, normally the temperatures here would really spike up higher, somewhere around here, and stay high for the rest of your cycle until it drops, and then you could get your period. But mine, they have been staying very, very close to the cover line, even sometimes dropping below it. The cover line is simply this line that I draw here after my temperature peaks in the morning. If this is confusing to you, please read that book. Basically, every morning you take your temperature when you wake up, and it helps you predict when you're fertile. But yeah, so once I ovulate, the temperature rises and then should stay like above that, and I draw a line to kind of separate before ovulation and after ovulation. So the fact that my temperatures always stay really close to the line is not a great sign. Those two things are what told me that I had a progesterone deficiency or estrogen dominance. The reason why I say both is because it's relative. That is kind of how I knew there was a problem. The book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility, specifically talks about this on page, I think it's 218. Yeah, so the book talks about it here, the luteal phase deficiencies or insufficiencies, and that's basically how I knew that I had something wrong with my progesterone. So that is my self-diagnosis without blood tests, although I will be tested probably within the next 3 to 5 months for sure, actually. So I will be able to confirm that once that happens with like actual labs. Yeah, so that's a little bit about how I self-diagnosed and why I self-diagnosed. I also went to see a naturopath to kind of confirm my what I was thinking about the whole fact that my hormones were imbalanced, and he was able to confirm that that's what he thought it was as well. First things I started doing after my last miscarriage was taking Vitex. It's a herb that I've heard talked about many, many times in podcasts, in books. In this book too, they've talked about it, also in the Hormone Balance Bible. It's like a super herb that's for women that acts on the hypothalamus, pituitary, something else axis. I'm thinking it's the ovaries, but I'm not sure. And basically what it does is that it helps with luteal phase insufficiencies, like I just showed you in the book, which means that it would help with my progesterone. However, with Vitex, like it takes time to work, so it can take, usually people say to take it for 3 months and then take a break and see if your system starts to like kick in and do it on its own. But the thing with Vitex as well is that you have to also be working on what caused the problem, I think. Anyways, I think that goes without saying for anything. Even if it rewired everything in my body and suddenly everything started working well, if I continue to make the same mistakes as I was making before, then I think that inevitably I would end up sick and in the same position as I am right now with the low progesterone and everything. So I started taking the Vitex. I think it's important. I think it has possibly already had an effect, but we will see. Maybe I'll make a video on that at some point. But I had to kind of go further and see what was the real cause for this and how to fix it, of course. So I've had my suspicions over the last year, done a lot of research. I kind of had been putting it on 2 things. Number 1, my vegan diet, and number 2, my the fact that I was on birth control for so long, because birth control is estrogenic in nature. And so yeah, those were kind of like the causes that I had narrowed it down to. But I ended up taking a course over the winter break. I have, I think, 3 or 4 videos left to watch in it. It's a course by somebody called Noelle Covari and her husband. She has Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, and her husband as well had hypothyroidism, and she also had PCOS. And they both were able to heal their hypothyroidism naturally, and to get off of their Synthroid and everything. And the reason why this is important is because you're probably like, why is she talking about thyroid now? Is because I have had a thyroid problem since I was 19, probably earlier, considering it took me so long to see a doctor about it. But yeah, since 19, I've been on really high dose medication of Synthroid to fix a hypothyroid. And that was the age where I really started cutting meat out of my diet. Well, meat had already been cut out for a while, but that I started to also cut out dairy and eggs and all that stuff. And I had also started to experiment with coming off of birth control. And then all of these problems happened. So that's also like why I blamed it on those 2 things. Thyroid is connected to, honestly, your whole body. It's connected to your metabolic rate, and also very heavily connected to hormones, including estrogen and progesterone, which we're going to get into. It's really in depth. But yeah, I always kind of knew that my thyroid had something to do with the problems that I was also going through in my cycle. Once I made the connection between the liver producing thyroid binding globulin when there was too much excess estrogen roaming around the body, that is when the first time that I kind of connected the thyroid to the progesterone deficiency / estrogen dominance. I hope this is not too complicated. So over the break, there was like this little bundle thing being sold online where 100 different content creators and influencers got together and decided to sell their programs, their books, their courses, all on holistic living. And so Noelle Covari, the girl that I was talking about, she included her Perfect Thyroid course, which is actually $300 US usually, and the entire bundle was only $50 US. So I jumped on the opportunity and I took the course. In a matter of 48 hours, I finished almost the entire course. It went so in depth and it was so good and I couldn't get enough of it. And so from there, I was kind of able to pinpoint the causes of not only the progesterone deficiency, which I'll explain a little bit more in detail, but also the thyroid. There were a few things that I was doing wrong in my life, I guess, especially like in my early adulthood, which I'm still in, but more like earlier 20s, and also as my later teens, I guess. The first one being alcohol. I used to consume quite a lot of alcohol, and alcohol is extremely estrogenic. I also was vegan for very long, as I've talked about in the past, not only on my channel here, but also on my Instagram. And not only is a vegan diet full of estrogen, because a lot of this food and the substitutes for protein are from soy. So I think like most vegan foods that you find at the grocery store have some kind of soy in it, and soy is extremely estrogenic, so there's that. But also with your thyroid, which I will still connect to the progesterone thing in a little bit, but with the thyroid, how it works is that the thyroid hormones need 2 things in order to be created. One of them is the mineral iodine, and the other thing is an amino acid called tyrosine. Now, when I realized I had a thyroid problem, everyone asked me if I was getting enough salt or iodine, and no one had ever talked to me about the whole tyrosine thing. Basically, tyrosine is an amino acid. It's a non-essential one, but it is made from another amino acid that is essential. That's called phenylalanine. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's what it's called. And that amino acid is essential for us to eat, and it is primarily found in milk, eggs, and meat. So when I completely removed all of those things from my diet, inevitably my thyroid crashed. That was a big reason for it. Also, another thing is, like I said, birth control also puts a lot more estrogen in your body than your body can detox. And I was on birth control for 7 years. So that was also a big reason. So all those things together, what happened is that a lot of estrogen ended up being in my body. Also, if you're thinking about veganism, removing a lot of important foods, especially proteins and stuff, your body ends up going into a chronic stress mode. And what happens when there is chronic stress is that cortisol mixed with all of the estrogen, obviously, that was being put into my body by my lifestyle choices, they kind of team up and just start attacking the body. Also, estrogen and cortisol are antithyroid stress hormones. So basically, thyroid and progesterone work together against estrogen and cortisol and estrogen work together against progesterone and thyroid. Because of my lifestyle choices, I was kind of feeding into more of the cortisol because my body was in such a chronic stress mode because of what I was feeding it, my lifestyle habits. And I was feeding into a lot of the estrogen, which is why it attacked the thyroid and the progesterone, and why now I'm having problems. I hope that made sense. I also wanted to mention that a very big way of noticing if your thyroid is working properly or not is 2 ways. Number 1, it is to check your temperature, which I already do, like I told you, with my tracking of my cycle. Ideally, your temperatures would be around 98.6. I have very low temperatures ranging from 97 to the max is like 98.2 so far anyways. So that's pretty low. And that's something that I would want to increase, especially the ones that most of them are at the lower range of 97. So that's a way of knowing that your thyroid is not working efficiently, considering that thyroid regulates everything that is metabolic, including like your heat production, and that's why like people with hypothyroid are often cold. So anyways, that's one of the ways. And the second thing to do is also check your heart rate. Interesting thing, mine is also low. Ideally, you'd want it between 77 and 88 beats per minute when you're resting. Mine is, holy crap, when I'm talking, it's at 94. This is a Fitbit, by the way. Also linked, I'm not sure if it's linked in my description, but it's linked on my website if ever you guys want to check that out. But yeah, mine's at 94 right now. But when I'm resting, it actually goes as low as 57. And a healthy heart rate is between healthy, like in the normal range, but not ideal, is between 60 and 100. So I have a really low heart rate, which is not good at all, in my opinion, and according to the web and everything. I even read that if it goes too low, you have to get a pacemaker. Like, you know what people, like old people have when they need to have their heart working, like something else works their heart for them. So pacemaker installed. Not going to happen because I'm going to fix this problem. Yeah, those are 2 ways to know that your thyroid isn't working properly, and 2 ways that I can testify that mine is not. Now, the video is 15 minutes so far, unedited. I'm going to try to conclude this. How I am planning on fixing this. I'm not going to get into too much of the details because everything is extremely scientific, but I'll try to give you like a quick little sweep over what the protocol is for me right now. I have tried other things in the past that have not worked for reasons that you might obviously see. For example, not having any sugar in my diet whatsoever, limiting myself on sugars and also on carbs. Those don't work because the one thing that I do need is sugar. And sugar is very controversial, I know, in society, but the liver actually uses sugar to convert T4 to T3. If you don't know what that is, T4 is the inactive hormone that is produced by the thyroid, and basically T4 needs to be converted into T3, most of it anyways. There is some T3 that is produced directly from the thyroid, but most of it is converted in the liver. So yeah, T4 is converted in the liver to T3, the active thyroid hormone that binds to most of the cells in your body. And the thing that helps the conversion to the active hormone is sugar, glucose. So basically, one of the important things for me to do is to actually consume sugar in the morning with my breakfast. Now, I'm not saying to like load up on pancakes or anything, but it is important for me to have either fruits, which ideally would be fruits like oranges, or ideally citrus or guava is apparently best. But sugar in the morning could be that, maple syrup, honey, or cane sugar. Those are my 4 options. Cane sugar obviously being probably the one I would try to stay away from the most, usually be fruit. So basically what happens is that when you have sugar, when your sugar starts to go up, your cortisol drops, which is obviously great because then it gives your thyroid and your progesterone a fighting chance. And the idea is to not be eating these refined sugars that make you, and these processed junk foods that make you kind of spike way up high in your sugars, then drop really low and cause insulin resistance and all this, from my understanding. So yeah, sticking to like good sugars like in fruits and all that. So yeah, number 1 is having fruits in the morning, and that is why other protocols have not worked for me. And this is just like what I've learned from the course. So hopefully I'm right. The second thing, this I've been doing for, I think, is it 2 or 3 years now, is no alcohol. I've been alcohol free for many years now, so that's no problem. The third thing is to start eating meat again, especially red meat, super important, and also including collagen and gelatin into my diet because of the amino acid profile. 1, because the thyroid needs that amino acid I was talking about before in order to make the thyroid hormones, and also once the thyroid regulates, progesterone regulates as well as estrogen goes down. But I also wanted to talk about how progesterone is made from cholesterol. Most sex hormones are made from cholesterol, and you can find cholesterol in eggs and whatnot. So I think that's really important, is reintroducing animal protein and animal products into my diet. By doing all of this, the goal is to lower my estrogen and lower my cortisol so that I can switch over to producing more progesterone and more T3, more thyroid hormone, having that nice conversion done in the liver. It might sound really, really complicated, but honestly, it feels nice to know that there's some kind of solution. I'm hoping it's really going to work. I think it can take up to 6 months of eating right and implementing that lifestyle, those lifestyle factors. Oh, also another important fact is in exercise, not doing cardio and not doing any intense training like CrossFit and stuff, which is what I was doing. I've been doing for a really long time. I always like things that are higher in cardio. So yeah, it's kind of switching that up and doing more things like yoga, walking, leisurely things. Even in the course they mentioned kayaking and whatnot, things that are leisurely, things that don't stress the body out too much. So that's what I'm going to be working on. And yeah, it might sound really complicated, but it's nice to know that there is some kind of solution for me. I feel like this is really doable. I don't feel too restricted in my foods or anything. Everything makes sense scientifically to me. And so I do have hope that once I implement these things, I'll be able to heal my thyroid and also hold a pregnancy. Thank you guys so much for watching, as per usual. I think next week I'll probably be making a video that's something more like a vlog, like I said, from home, so my home life. And yeah, I will see you next week. Thank you guys so much for being here. Bye everyone. Literally 30 minutes into the course and I'm screaming and stopping every freaking 2 minutes to write down notes because holy shit.